Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Dirks, and on behalf of ACRL and Choice, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Lessons in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Managing Change from Where You Are, which is sponsored by ProQuest. Today's discussion is one in a series of webinars from ACRL and Choice that addresses new ideas, developments, and products of interest to the academic library community. Free to users, these structured 60-minute live presentations provide the opportunity for interactive discussions of important new issues and developments in academic librarianship by librarians, vendors, authors, and other interested stakeholders. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a couple of features of the webinar software. First off, all of you attendees who are out there, many of you, we have sort of automatically muted you and your cameras are off. So please don't worry about generating noise or feedback or anything like that. That should be all taken care of for you. Also, in the main area of the screen, as you can see, you should be able to follow along with the presentation materials. We're using the Q&A feature today as our primary means of communications with the audience. So if you have questions for Roosevelt, please drop them into that Q&A module. And at the end, we will take some time to answer as many as we can get to, but we apologize in advance because we know we will not have time to get to all of the questions. There will simply be too many of them, but we'll do our best. Also note that we are recording today's program and that everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to that archived version. I would also mention that we are live tweeting the event. So if you've got another screen handy and you'd like to participate in that discussion, please use the hashtag ACRL Choice Webinars, all as one word. And as I have mentioned, our speaker today is Roosevelt Weeks. Roosevelt Weeks is the director of the Austin Public Library, where he leads a dynamic team and library system. His responsibility includes 20 branch locations, the History Center, and a new central library. Roosevelt joined the Austin Public Library team in September of 2017. Prior to joining the Austin Public Library, he was the deputy director and chief of staff at the Houston Public Library. Roosevelt is passionate about improving technology, literacy, and education, both inside and outside the library. He also works directly with community leaders to agree upon shared values, vision, and measures of success. This furthers the combined goal of ensuring a future workforce capable of the complex critical thinking skills necessary to succeed in an ever-changing competitive environment. In addition, he is a member and serves on several committees within the American Library Association, Public Library Association, Texas Library Association, and Urban Library Council. He also is a member and participates within the National Forum for Black Public Administrators and Society for Human Resource Management. So with that, we are ready to get started, and I will turn things over to Roosevelt.
Thank you so much, Mark, for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. My name is Roosevelt Weeks, and as Mark said, I am the proud director of the Austin Public Library. My partner in crime, Katie Dover Taylor, will not be able to make it with us today. She has some illness to come up, and she won't be able to be with us. But Katie, if you're on, I send you much love, and I miss you. And if I mess up, say a quick prayer for me. But welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you here. Just to give you a little background on me and how I got into libraries, I worked in the private sector for over 20 years before I got into public libraries. But what got me into public libraries centers around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I volunteered to work at a friend's library in Pasadena, Texas, which is right outside of Houston, Texas. And one of the things that I did there while I was there is that I worked in the computer lab where I taught computer classes. And this one lady came in one day after I had taught a class and said, I need some help with learning Microsoft Word. And her situation was that she had 2 or 3 jobs. And this one job that she had, if she could pass the test, she would be able to let that job go and be able to spend time with her family, quality time with her family, and to take care of her family. And so I worked with this young lady for 3 weeks. And then one day she walked in the door with this big smile on her face and said, I got the job. And right then and there, I was working for a huge consulting company, Accenture, matter of fact. I left that job and I wanted to make libraries what I wanted to do. And so, you go from 6 figures down to the low 5 figures, but I found my calling in helping that individual. I found out that that's what library was all about. And this is how we could help those that are less fortunate than we are. These are some people that come into our libraries with all kind of background, with all kind of issues that they face on a daily basis. And we as librarians can help them get to that next level. And so that's how I got into libraries. And I'm proud that I did make that change. So let's just go ahead and get into why it's important to have diversity, equity, and inclusion into libraries. And so let's get a good understanding of what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean. Okay, let me advance the slide here. We're having some problems advancing the slide, but give me a minute. With technology, that's the way it is. Until it come up, when you look at diversity, it's all about, who we are, whether it's our skin color, our culture, our lifestyle. It's all about that. And it's our language, our nationality, our orientation. And so it's important that we have a diverse work staff, a diverse programs that we offer. And one of the things that still troubles in this day and time is that a lot of people feel that diversity is not needed. But there's been many studies that diversity helps the bottom line. It helps to deliver quality program and service to people that truly needs it. And so I do believe that diversity make us better and not worse. Equity is the ideal of leveling the playing field. It's about fairness. And oftentimes we get equity and equality mixed up. Both of these items talk about fairness. The bottom line is to get to fairness. But equity is about, giving someone that extra lift because of where they are in their situation of needs. And so it is a difference in that. Inclusion is about being included, a part of something special. If you say diversity is being a part of an organization or being a part of something, inclusion is being invited to the party, but someone asking you to dance. You got a voice at the table. You're able to speak your ideas and your issues that concern you. And so that's the importance of making sure that when people are invited to be a part of a group, that you make them feel included in that. And so what I want to do now is quickly, I want to show you a video. And Mark, if we can get that video pulled up, that would be great. And while Mark is pulling that video up, I want you to when you see the video, see if you see yourself in this video. And this video is from my former company, Accenture, and it talks about diversity, equity, inclusion. And oftentimes, you may not know the person that's sitting next to you is feeling that way. And so let's take a look at this video. Oh my, what a powerful video. And I know most of us, I would dare say 90% of us saw ourselves in that video. And if you saw yourself in that video, click something in the chat to say, yes, I recognize that. And so I do want to make sure that everybody understand that we are diversity, inclusion, and equity is what makes us great. It's what makes us who we are as individuals. And now one of the things that's hard to talk about when you're talking about diversity, and then that big elephant in the room is always centered around race. And race plays a major part in the work that we do, especially in libraries, and how it plays out in how we do our services, how we do our collection, how we do our hiring. It plays a big role in that, and so it's very difficult to not take race in account when we're talking about diversity. And so I do want to focus on that a little bit. Mark, I'm not able to control the screen. And so we may need to someone need to advance it for me. But I do want to talk about the early history of public libraries. In most southern states, African American was excluded by law from attending libraries, by law. When libraries first started, way back when we first started this country, libraries were there. And the idea was to enlighten the citizens of our country. And by doing that, we allowed them to go to libraries. But unfortunately, people of color and especially Blacks were not allowed to do that. Kentucky opened the first public library for African Americans, by African Americans, for African Americans. And then, still throughout all that time, Blacks were excluded from being part of that, being part of libraries. I'm originally from Indianola, Mississippi. I know the Tougaloo Nine well. I know where Tougaloo College is. But what they wanted to do, you had a bunch of 9 students who just wanted to go to the public library to study and to read. It also was an act of civil disobedience, but it was something that they wanted to test. And then in 1962, ALA made a statement about libraries are supposed to be inclusive. They for everybody. And when they did that, 4 of the chapters within ALA decided to leave. Unfortunately, we've come a long ways, but we still have a long ways to go. You still have places where, they're open to the public, but they're not, people of color are not welcome or treated or made to feel welcome in our libraries. And so it's important that we make sure that, we open up our buildings to everybody. One of the things that we continue to, next slide, please. one of the things that we continue to face is if you look at libraries today, over 83% of our libraries made up of white, 7.1% Hispanic, 5.3% African American, and 3.5% Asian Americans. Now, when you look at this number, if you go back 10 years ago, this number hadn't changed very much. And part of that problem is that we're not attracting the people. We're not, as librarians and library workers, we're not showing that this is the field that people of color can exceed in. And all of this go back to when people walk in the door, how do you make them feel? Now, it's very important, since this number will not change overnight. It's important that that 83% buy into diversity, equity, and inclusion. If that 83% don't buy into helping us move that needle, then it's all for naught. And if you look at African American leaders in libraries, it's still a small number. And you know, I look at my numbers. I'm an African American male librarian. The numbers are very small. And so, you know, it's up to all of us to help move that needle and to press upon people that diversity, inclusion is important. It's important that that we don't use our position, our power to discriminate. And one of the next slide, please. And one of the things that that we want to make sure is some areas that we have to focus on in libraries in addressing diversity, equity, and inclusion is around these four things that I feel that we need to be able to do. And this could be in public libraries, academic libraries, school library. It does not matter. These things will apply to any of the work that you do when it comes to equity in our buildings. Policies. When you look at policies, we have to step back and look at our policy and to see, why were those policies put in place? Are these policies aimed at a specific group? Are they targeting a specific group? Are we trying to get a desired result? And I'm gonna give you two examples of things that even though we write policies for good reasons, we want some good expectations out of them, but policies also can be used in different ways in how we apply those policies. And give you an example here. One is, most libraries around the country, public libraries around the country, have a sleeping policy, no sleeping policy in their buildings. And when you look at that, you say, okay, that is good. That's to make sure that everybody is comfortable. Everybody is able to use the space in a way that is designed to be used. But here's an example of how this can go awry. You have Jamal who's homeless, comes in, just come in to use a computer. He's tired, and you know, from staying up all night trying to protect his things and just, you know, his life as well in some occasions. And he come in, you know, maybe 30 minutes into being into the library, and he lays his head down on the table, fall asleep. Library workers go by and say, "Sir, we have a policy. You need to wake up. We don't allow sleeping in our libraries." At the same time, let's just say Brett come in, college student, midterms, and he is been studying all night, coming to the library to finish up that last piece of research paper, and he doing it at his work at the table, and he lays his head down for a minute. And we walk past that individual, we see the book in his hand, we see his backpack, and then we move on. This is where we can't say that we have a policy of sleeping. Wake up Jamal, but let Brett stay asleep. And I'm not talking about something that's hypothetical. I'm talking about something that I've seen and I know happening in our libraries. So these are the type of things that we got to be very careful with when we write our policies. We write in these policies to help the organization do what it's designed to do and to serve everybody that walks into our doors. Another one that I would look at is we can look at our children policy and you know, unattended children policies. And a lot of us have these unattended children policies. and it's to protect the child. But then again, it's all about how you look at applying these policies to these children. You got one set over here where mom and dad work late past, the hours, and the parent tell the child to go to the library. It's a safe place. After school, go to the library. Make sure you do your homework. Sit down. Don't bother anybody, and be there. And we'll pick you up after we get off work. On the other hand, we got a family that come in with their children, read, children do their homework, and take care of what they need to take care of. This child over here who is a latchkey kid or is sent to the library after school acts up 1, 2, 3 times, and we tell them to stop. And then we get tired of that, and we said, look, it's time for you to leave. You have to leave the building. On the other hand, the same kid does the same thing, but he's with his mom or dad or caregiver, and we ask that child to stop, but we don't ask them to leave. And this is where problems come in how we apply these policies. And these things shouldn't be. And I know we have to make sure we take care of those that walk in our buildings, but a lot of times we have to check who we are. We have to recognize that we do hold some biases within ourselves and why we make those decisions when we do it. I'm not saying that everybody does this, but it does happen. And when it does happen, it helps us when we acknowledge that we have biases and that we have these separate things that's going on within us from our upbringing and who we are and how we were brought up, how we were raised, all that. Those things play a part in the policies and how we apply these policies and apply these rules when it comes to libraries. And so one of the things of helping us to grow, number one, is we have to acknowledge that I do have some issues. Not saying that they are all bad, but to acknowledge that we have some issues that I have to deal with so that I can see things in a different way. The second thing is a focus areas for us is around programs and services. I can truly say that librarians are some of the smartest people in the world. Librarian workers are some of the most innovative people in the world. And they can put on programs, they can do services. But part of the problem is we don't ask the community what they want. We make the assumption that we know what they want, we know what they need, what the needs are. And that is a fallacy within our industry of not being able to ask them, what is it that you want? What is it that you want out of us? And sometimes it's very hard for us to get out into the community, to get embedded in the community, because number one, especially if you're in urban areas where the majority of the customers that walk in the door that's out in your community are people of color. And when you talk about that 83%, being able to identify with those individuals and provide programs and services of what they need, we have to get out there and show empathy, embed ourselves in the community so they know that we care about them, and make sure that we show that we care about them before we say we care about them. And that's important to get the right programs and services to them. And oftentimes, I have 20 branches in my system, and every one of those branches is different, every last one of them. And so we can't come up with cookie cutter services and programs for these individuals. Story time may be good in one area, but for some people, I need to survive till tomorrow. I need to understand, how do I go get this shot? How do I find out how to get this vaccine? Those are life and death situations for some people that means more to them than, say, a story time or a book club. And so we have to make sure that the programs and services that we offering to them match what they want and match what they need. And so that's very important that we do that. The third part that we need to focus on when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion is collection development. Oftentimes when people of color walk into a library, they want to see people that looks like them. They want to see people that understand who they are. And they also want to get materials talking about who they are. They want to see authors that look like them. They want to see content that address them and know who they are. And so our collection development is another area where librarians do a fantastic job at building a collection that of bestsellers and things of that sort. But do you address what the community is asking for? Do you make sure you have materials that that people can see in themselves, or children can see in themselves, and say, "Hey, I could be that. I could do that." And so that's very important that we do that from a collection development standpoint. The fourth one, and I think the one that's going to help us to get this 83% down and raise up the people of color level is our staff hiring. And one of the big fallacies around when people say I'm not biased when I hire people, I'm not discriminatory when I hire people, I just hire the best people. And that is absolutely true. But what we're hiring are the best people that come in the doors, that sit at the table. That is absolutely true. But what about those individuals that are just as qualified, that's just as talented, that you're not reaching being at the table to get interviewed? And one of the things that we have to do, we have to hire, and most in public library settings and probably in academics as well, that you have hiring panels. If that hiring panel consists of all white females, the person that's most likely to get hired will be a white female. That's just the way it is. And so it's important that when you have a hiring panel, that you have a diverse hiring panel. And that's from a diverse standpoint of ideas, of color, background, heritage, all of that. You need to play a part in that. And if you can't get a hiring panel that's diverse, look into other departments, other organizations that do the work or that you partner with in the community to sit on those hiring panels so that you can get a different thought and views on the people that come through the door. The second thing is you got to reach out to minority organizations to find folks. I'm a member of the Black Caucus in ALA and Texas Black Caucus. Those are great places to. Reformer is a great place. There are many affinity groups within our organization that we are part of that we can reach out to get the diverse, to get a diverse staff. And the only way we can do that, we got to be intentional about doing that. Sitting back and hoping that it happens, it will not happen. You got to be intentional about doing that. And also, I went to Texas Southern University, which is an HBCU. It is a great ground to go and start recruiting. If you don't have those inroads, there are many organizations within your cities or in your town that'll help you, point you to those HBCUs or get in contact with those folks at those universities. And it's important that that we have those different voices at the table. And so hiring is a big piece of what we do, and having or making the change those dynamics into how we get things done. And so it take a huge commitment. And I'm talking to the directors and professors that are out there, the ADs, assistant directors, deputy directors out there. You got to be intentional in this is what you want to do. It's not, you can't just assign this off to someone else to do. You have to be the one to say, hey, this is the direction that we're going to go into. This is the direction that we're going to that we want to have, and we want to set these goals to get there for this. Not saying that we're looking for quotas. We're looking for the best people, and I can guarantee you there are a lot of librarians and librarian workers out there that want to have an opportunity to lead and to be part of a dynamic organization. We just have to make the commitment to go out and meet those individuals. Next slide, please. And so let's talk about managing change where you are. Oftentimes we say that we can't do anything. My little voice, I only represent 5% of the organization. I only represent 7%, 3% of the organization, and people are not gonna go listen to me. You're so wrong there. One of the things that you got to do as an individual, you can't be afraid. You can't just sit back and say, I'm just not, I don't want to cause any problems. I don't want to cause any trouble. But I can tell you this, our good friend and beloved librarian lover, John Lewis, who got into the civil rights business because he was denied a library card in his hometown in Alabama. And his thing about you got to get into good trouble. And his one of his motto, and I'm gonna paraphrase this, is that if you see anything that's wrong, you are morally obligated to say something. And I'm saying that to you, individuals who see discrimination or being discriminated against. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody, whether it's your leadership team, whether it's your HR team, or whether it's some other allies within your organization that you can talk to, or outside of your organization that could bring forth the issue. But the main thing is, do not be afraid to speak up. And I know all of us live in different environments, come from different our political environment, or the political or the setting that we are in, and all that may be different. But you have to find a way to make your voice heard. Unless you say something, nothing will get done. And I often tell my staff members when they come to me, a person of color come to me and say, "Hey, this is happening to me." I said, "Okay, let's say, do you want to make this official, or do you just want to just talk informally? If you tell me you want to just talk about this informally, I can't do anything. I can look at the situation and try to make sure it doesn't happen. But unless you do some formally to say, hey, look, I want to make a formal complaint that this is happening, then as leaders, we can act on that. We are obligated to act on that. If you in most public institutions and some private institutions, you are obligated when someone bring a discrimination against you, because most organizations have discrimination policies. And so we are obligated to act. And so I'm asking you, library worker, whatever level you're working in, if you see something that's not right, bring it to their attention. Bring it to your leadership attention and say something about it. And that brings me to my next point. Speaking truth to power. And I know this is easier said than done, but I go back to number one. You can't be afraid. You can't be afraid. Sometimes you have to take those risks, but always do it with respect. And oftentimes those who are in power, they understand respect. And when you do that, oftentimes, and I say that because I know there are times when people will not look at that. They'll look at it as being a threat. They will look at it as being insubordinate, or whatever other term they want to use. But you have to do that. And sometimes we have to take a risk and step out and tell people when this is happening. And respect will say, you know what? I think you're part of that problem. Yes, I'm gonna let that sink in, because I know a lot of people laughing at that and saying, yeah, you can say that because you're a director. No, I will say that if I see something going on in my organization and I need to talk to the city manager, the mayor, or council, whatever, I will speak truth to power. I will do that. And I'm just like the majority of you, I'm an introvert. But when it comes to things that matter, I can become an introvert as quick as you can turn around in the day, because it matters. And so I'm asking you to be able to speak truth to power, and don't be afraid. And sometimes you have to make sacrifices. And so don't be afraid. Speak truth to power. And then the next point is embrace discomfort. One of the hardest things to talk about when you're talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion is a race. It is a discomfort to talk about race, but we have to get past that. We have to say, okay, I'm gonna be uncomfortable with it, but let's go ahead and have that conversation. And I guarantee you, once you start having those conversations, you'll be amazed at how things start falling apart, how the conversation become easier to have, how those walls that we put up begin to come down. And so we have to embrace the fact that this is going to be uncomfortable for me. And I'm saying and this will go with a lot of people who may not have had these conversations with staff or with the community. And oftentimes, when you don't have those conversations, or you're afraid to get into that discomfort zone, you create more problems. Putting our head in the sand, thinking it's going to go away, or let somebody else handle it, that is not the way we want to handle these issues. We got to go forward. We got to be brave about it, and we just got to do it. And oftentimes, when you have those initial conversations, you'll find out that those conversations start getting easier for you. The next thing is to be knowledgeable. Understand the people that you serve, understand the staff that you have, and understand that we all have biases and stereotypes. We all have those biases within us because it's, as we stated earlier, it's how we were raised, the environment that we came from. And you'd be amazed, when I was growing up in Mississippi, and I tell people oftentimes when I came to Texas, I didn't see racism until I got to Texas, coming from Mississippi. Because in Mississippi, we understood, hey, you stay on that side of the track, I'm gonna stay on this side of the track. What you do over there, let you do your thing. What I'm gonna do over here, we're gonna do our thing. And we didn't see that. We knew where we were. We knew what part of the town we were gonna live in, and we lived with that. When I got to Texas, I saw where it was just blatant. It was like, are you kidding me? You don't, being from Mississippi, you don't call me a boy and thinking it's an endearing term. You don't do that. And so we all have to understand that there are some biases and stereotypes. And then I want to talk a little about one that's going on in our country right now. Is we had a lot of people in the talked about our current vice president and calling her Kamala, and that's just plain microaggression to its utmost. And my thing is, if you can say Pamela, you can say Kamala. It's the same thing. But we want to show our microaggression. One of the things that's important to people is their name. And I used to do this until I learned better. I became knowledgeable of it. My African friends, my Nigerian friends, they have names that are very difficult to pronounce, and they give up another name. And I said, no. When I found out that that's microaggression, I said, no. Tell me your name. Help me to pronounce your name. And then when I learn the name, I call them by their name. And one thing you'll see is that you'll see the pride in them that, hey, this person is making an effort to call me by my name, my God-given name, the name my mama gave me. That's an important thing. It shows them that, hey, I care about who you are. I care about what your name represents, because oftentimes our name have meaning. Our parents give us our name because it means something. It carries something. And so to call someone by their name, the name that their mom gave them, their dad gave them, or their grandmother gave, that's important. And so we have to understand our bias, our stereotypes, and understand the community that we serve, understand the staff that we have, to understand what they're going through. And when we do that, we help move that needle. We help move things down the road. And then another thing is a cultural history. We all do things different. Understand where people are. Understand what makes them tick. Understand what's a no-no in their community. Understand what's good, what they like. That's important when you're going out and serving a diverse community. And how you do that, we talked about a little about this earlier, is that you got to get in the community, you got to get embedded. And I hope that every organization that's represented on this call have a robust outreach and engagement team, because that's how you get to know the people in your community. That's how you get to know the individual, what their cultures are, what they like, and understand that we can't just provide, if it worked over here, it should work over here. No, part of it may work, but you may end up offending someone and you may not even know it because we don't become knowledgeable what's going on, the people that we're serving or the people that's around us. And then finally, we must develop a plan. Um, you know, having goals with no plan, you just planning on just wandering in the wind. It means nothing. In an organization, whatever type library you have, you got to have a written plan, a plan to address this equity, diversity, and inclusion issues that are out there. That plan must be specific. It must be something that we can measure to say how we get from here to how we get to there, and understand that progress. And you can come up with a simple tool and sitting down, surveying your staff. Just ask them certain questions of, how do you feel about this? Tell me your understanding of this. And talk about race, talk about those things that are hard to talk about. Just do a simple survey of your staff and review that staff with your upper management, with your management team. And then once you get that information, y'all review that, share that back out to your staff. And so everybody understand, hey, we got a problem. We have a problem. And that's one of the things that we have to do is when you start in that plan, develop that plan where it makes sense to you, your staff, your stakeholders, and everybody that's connected to the library. And there are many tools out there. There are many things out there that can help you develop that plan. Here recently, I've been at Austin Public for 3 years, and it's been a wonderful ride. And we've set up a EDI committee to address some of the concerns around the things that we see. And a lot of those things surround, the things that we talked about earlier: collection development, hiring process, policies, and things of that nature. But it's very difficult when you have individuals in the organization that truly don't embrace change, don't embrace those ideas. And so you have to be forceful in that. You stay on top of that. Don't put that on the shelf. When you develop your plan, don't put it on the shelf. Make it about everything that you do. Everything that I do will be done through an equity lens. And that equity lens is say, okay, if I did this, how will this impact this group, this organization? We have to do that if we're going to move that needle and to be able to serve those in the community that's diverse and that are different from who we are. The second thing that I've done is I've created a position, an equity officer for the library. And how you know you truly want to make some change, and I tell people all the time, is where your money is, that's where your priorities are. If you don't put money behind your plan, then you're saying that I don't take this serious. I end up taking some vacant positions to create this position because I believe this is how it's going to get us started. This is going to get us to the place we need to be. And I believe that. And so if you're going to develop a plan, put some money behind it. Make it a priority in your organization. Okay? Next slide. Oh, and I misspelled a word. I'm sorry. I'm a librarian. I make mistakes. I'm sorry. But here are some resources for you. Our great partner, ProQuest, have a bunch of resources out there for you. When it comes to the collection, different topics, and go to that topic and look at that Every Voice 2020 campaign. It is absolutely dynamic, and ProQuest heads off to you for putting that together. And here's some other resources for you that you can use and go to help you if you don't have a diversity plan or an equity plan. You can go out there and they can help you provide those plans. And finally, it has been a joy, and we're going to take some questions now. And also, At the end, we'll put my phone number, my email address up there. And if you have any questions for me or anybody else that's out there, now is an opportunity for you to do that. So what you can do is put your questions out there in the chat, and let's see if we can answer some of your questions. So with that, Mark, do you have those questions? Any questions lined up for us?
Yes, we have lots of questions already in the queue coming in through the Q&A module there. As Roosevelt said, please feel free to drop questions in there as they occur to you, and we'll jump right in. So the first question that we've got lined up here is what have you found are the biggest bureaucratic roadblocks when trying to affect change, and how have you overcome them?
That's an excellent question. One of the things that those bureaucracy, those bureaucratic things, these things are man-made. These are things that are primarily done by leaders in our organization. And if you made them, you can undo them. And the thing is, you got to challenge those things, come up with those valid reasons for challenging those things. And if you got a policy that does not make sense, that do not address the issue that you're facing, find ways to change those things. And if you have people within that's above you, above your pay grade, as some would like to say, talk to them about it. Talk to them about how we can make these changes. One of the things I always ask my staff is that if you bring me a problem, bring a couple solutions with you when you bring that to me. And so always have some solutions ready to go to say, hey, here's how we can get past this policy, or here how we can change this policy. And so those are some of the things that that I've seen.
Excellent. The next one we've got here is on your own path to DEI initiatives. Were there any areas where you expected to find resistance within the administration, but that you didn't?
Yes. Oftentimes here's this bias and these stereotypes come in. You look at some of your colleagues who are white and you say they don't understand these issues. They don't understand diversity. They don't want to push these things forward. But what you find out is, no, you do have some folks that are out there that really want to push this, who are not people of color. And so what we have to do is to use everybody that understand this work, create these allies to help us move this thing forward. And so, in our bias and our stereotypes, don't look at it at the face cover. Look at it as everybody could help out in this area. And so, one of the things that I found out that, hey, there are a lot of people out there that want to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in our libraries.
All right, and next we've got another question here. What role, if any, do vendors have to play in helping libraries advance social justice?
Oh, wow, that's an excellent question there. Vendors can play the same role as library leaders play. Everything that you provide to us, make sure you have a diversity piece in it. If you're offering books, make sure that collection is diverse, with diverse authors that address people that's different from the norm, from the majority. And so when they do that, you'll find out that it will help libraries move the needle forward and to move these discussions forward. And vendors are mostly private companies. And they can do a lot of things that public entities can't do. And so it would, if these vendors would help us to help move that needle by providing those products and services to us that'll help us to advance diversity in our libraries, that would be wonderful.
Excellent. So we have a question here from Carrie, and Carrie asks, or starts out in saying, a question for Mr. Weeks. From your perspective as a library director, how can lower level staff best advocate for organizational systemic changes. And I think that's something you addressed
Yep.
a bit in your presentation, but do you have anything more to say about that?
Yeah, Carrie, and hopefully most directors are like me, and I think most of them are. We're very approachable. Don't be afraid to go into your director's office to say, hey, can we have just a conversation? Don't be afraid. And here's part of the issue that we have in libraries. Our libraries, in most of them, are very hierarchical. It's director, assistant director, blah blah, division, on and on and on. And people don't, and a lot of we like to stick to that, but we got to get rid of those things, because some of the best ideas, the best work that get done is pushed from the bottom up. And so I would, Carrie, I would suggest that you take those ideas to your leadership team, take it direct to the director, and hopefully he's established, or he or she have established a place where it's welcome, that you have those open lines of communications. And so I would suggest, don't be afraid, be bold, and as our friend John Lewis say, don't be afraid to get into that good trouble.
Excellent. We have a question here from Ashley, who asks, what can library science programs do to better prepare students and future librarians to help move diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts forward?
Oh my goodness, that is a dynamic question. Thank you so much for asking that, Ashley. Library schools have to understand what's going on out here in the real world. We have to start teaching that if you want to be in this profession, you're going to encounter people that look different than the students that are in this class right now. And you got to be able to love that and have a passion for service. For service. That's what we are about. And a lot of us go into libraries, get into libraries in this profession for many reasons. One that I hear often is that I love books. I love reading books. I love everything about books. That's good. But if you don't have a love for serving people, you should not get into this business, especially if you're in the public or academic arena. You should not. I would admonish or ask that library schools start teaching what's going on out here in the real world, and teaching them that it's important to understand budgeting. It's important to understand staffing. It's important to understand outreach. It's important to understand the diversity of people that come into your doors. It's important to understand that there are a lot of people out here that come in our doors that are mentally ill, and how we deal with that mental illness. And oftentimes I hear librarians say, I didn't go to school to do this. But that's what you sign up for. The people that come in our doors, we got to address those issues. We got to be able to address those things. Especially if you're in a public library setting. And so those are some of the things that I would hope that library schools would do.
Great. We have so many questions here even navigating them, I apologize if it takes me a second
No problem,
to get through them.
No problem.
So we have a question here from Laura, and Laura says, you mentioned that sometimes people don't embrace change. Would you talk more about how you address those who are reluctant to even acknowledge that equity, diversity, and inclusion is important?
Yeah, that's a great question, Laura. It's important that we show them why it's important, why we want to address these things. When someone walks in the door and we treat them different, that's a problem. When we treat them differently, it creates more problems for us than it do for the individual. It creates long-term problems. And so you look at it as, yes, change hurt. Yes, change can be difficult. But if we're going to be in this field of helping people, we have to be able to make those changes. And one of the things that I do is, and I'm a very compassionate individual. If if you have leaders that do not want to address change, you sit down and make it part of their evaluation, make it part of what we're trying to do. Matter of fact, you make it part of everybody's evaluation, that this is some of the things that we want to embrace, especially managers. If you can't do these things, hey, maybe this is not the right field for you, or this may be not the right area for you to do. And so, you don't ever want to get to the point where you asking someone, hey, maybe this is not the place. Maybe you need to move on to another profession or do something different. You hope that's the last result. But if they can't learn to embrace these type changes in your organization, then you really need to sit back and say, hey, where do we go from here? Because we can't have those attitudes in our organization and to be successful. You can't do it.
Just looking through the questions as they keep sort of jumping around. We've got a question here from Louis, who says, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but what would you recommend to do when DEI policies don't reflect the library staff feelings in terms of inclusion and equity, and when there's a disconnect between the leadership and the lower level folks?
This is why when you're setting up your DEI plan, you got to include everybody, and not everybody, but people at every level of the organization, so that there won't be that disconnect. This is a conversation that you have. It's not something that get pressed down from on high. No, this is something that's built together. And so in order to avoid that happening, that is a conversation, a collaborative effort in developing your plan. And so once that happens, then you got to put things in place to make sure that this thing just doesn't sit on the shelf, and that we embracing it, and it's part of our thinking and our planning process. And so making sure that at all levels of your organization is part of that process.
Great. So we've got, being mindful of the time, I think maybe we have time for one more question. We have a question here from Meg, who says that libraries often cite a commitment to neutrality as a reason for not taking a stand on social issues or enacting policies. Do you have any thoughts on encouraging leadership to commit to taking stances on issues like that? Or, yeah.
Neutrality can be a bad word. When you don't act when you see something that's wrong, you are taking a stand. And whether we accept that or not, that fact, it is what it is. What I like to do is, when I see libraries, one of places that's trusted in this country, is one of the most respected institutes in this country. People look to us to make sure that we are able to provide spaces to address issues that are happening in our community. The issues that happened during the summer, during the George Floyd killing, the things that happened on January the 6th at our Capitol, those things are a conversation that we should be having, and not be afraid, and not let anybody pressure you into not letting your voice be heard on that, because that's what libraries are all about. Libraries are about having those discourse and having the resources to point people in the right direction to get good information, so that these things won't continue to happen. And so sitting back and saying that we're not neutral, there's no neutrality in these things. We all have, as libraries, we have opinions on things. And that doesn't say that when we enter into this profession, we lose our opinions. We lose our thought. We lose our integrity on not saying anything. If you see something that's wrong, say something.
Excellent. So as sort of a last word coming from the audience that I see sort of reflected in many of the comments and questions that we've gotten, from Arabeth, who says, not a question, but a thank you. Thank you for leading by example and for encouraging folks to fight the good fight always. So glad I was able to participate today. So I just wanted to relay that to you and to echo it and to say thank you so much for taking the time to put together this presentation. Really appreciate it.
Mark, ACRL, ProQuest, thank you all for giving us this platform to talk about these important issues around library. And thank you for the people that have shown up to attend this. And I really hope that we've said something here, or that you share with one another, that will help us to be better and to take us to the next level in supporting those people in our community or the people that we serve. And guys, my email information is on the slide there. You can contact me anytime. And if you ask me a question, I promise to get back to you. I won't leave it out there. It may take me a minute to get there, but I will respond to you. But thank you for being a good audience, and thank you for the work that you do every day. It's important work, and don't stop doing that work or let anybody encourage you from doing that great work. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you from ACRL and Choice as well, to everyone out there. As we sign out today, I would just encourage you to, if you have one more minute or two, to give us a couple of responses in the brief survey that should pop up on your browser. We really appreciate your taking the time to do so, and you're taking the time to join us today. We hope in the near future that you will join us again for another webinar. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.